Both of the.
All right. 4:30, I'll call the first inaugural meeting of the Community Life and Public Safety Committee to order. Pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, very well. Can we have roll call, please?
Sure. Ismail?
Present.
Ermeling?
Here.
Alsted?
Present.
Salenka?
Present.
Voss?
Present.
Lopez Raro?
Here.
And Olson.
Here. Very well.
Do I need to, do I with this, because there's the ex officio, do I call those, roll call for those?
I don't believe
Okay.
so. You'll note in minutes who's in attendance at the
Yeah.
meeting, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't know.
Awesome, good. Okay. So since this is the first one and some of us know each other and some of us do not, let's do some introductions. So I'll start. I'm Jim Pensineau. I'm a village trustee here at the Village of Weston, small business owner, Patriot Auto Repair, and the committee chair of the Community Life Public Safety Committee. The village board turned this committee on a couple of months ago. We have excellent smiling, shining faces here that are willing to come and help us out and get this all together in the right direction. So I appreciate you coming here this evening. We'll just go around the room. Let's start with Valerie.
Valerie Parker, planning technician for Village of Weston and the secretary for this new committee.
I'm Pam Brayman. I'm the clerk for the Village of Weston. I'm Carrie Edmondson, assistant planner for the Village of Weston.
I'm Jamie Gabert, the administrator.
Barbara, trustee.
In Voss. Retired, but trying here because I have time to help.
I'm Luis Lopez. I've been a resident of the Village of Weston since 2007. I work as a police lieutenant up in Wausau, and I also serve on the Public Works Committee.
I'm Andrea Alsted, like Kim. I'm also retired and have time. I have lived in Weston going on 26 years since we moved up to the area, so I'm hoping I can be of some help.
John Schwalk, I'm fairly new to Weston. Last May we moved from Schofield to Weston, live over on Caribou Lane, kind of provide clubs there. Construction manager for Gar Engineering. Two boys, 16 and 14.
Brent Olson, I've lived in Weston for about 8 years now. I also work full-time in law enforcement, formerly with the leash agency.
Josh Finke, I'm the fire district fire chief.
Roman McGuire, Village of Weston building inspector, been with the village for 8 years.
Jennifer Higgins, I'm the planning and development director for the village, and I have been here since 2003.
Travis Leverton, building inspector, and besides 2 years, actually I lived in Weston for 44 years. So.
Jeremy Hunt, chief of Mountain.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Well, now we all know each other. We're not strangers. And if you forget, my name's not on my shirt, but it's here, and everyone else has appropriate name tags. All right, perfect. Public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to make public comment that is online?
Have anybody else besides staff online?
Perfect. Anyone on the phone? On the phone. Got one in the audience here. Would you wish to make your public comment now or when it comes to that agenda item?
When it comes to that.
Fantastic. Very well. We'll close the public comment. There are no minutes from previous meetings because we have had none. Written communications? No, not. Very well. And no unfinished business since this is our first business that we're starting. So with that being said, on to new business. First item is roles, responsibilities, and goals of this committee. So.
Yeah, so we did have something included in the packet about mission and vision statement for the committee. Trustee Pincinot felt like that might also be something good to kind of give purpose or direction, because if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority, right? So if there was some samples that were provided, they are solely samples. If committee members felt like there was some good pieces but wanted to add some around it, we certainly can. Also understand that we've been at this for about 5 minutes. So if you wanted to kind of digest through this meeting and it's something that we bring back up, that's also something that we can do. But we thought maybe starting with that mission piece, and then we could kind of go into more in depth onto how things that the committee views as things they want to tackle maybe in the next year or goals would fit into the respective ordinances.
Very good. So this is on page 7 of our packet. Did anyone have any thoughts on the provided information? Do you like the mission statement that's there? I think it's important, like Jamie said, to have something, right? Because we can't make everything a priority. And it reminds us, we're taking our time. We spent a lot of time outside of here, plus the time that we have here tonight, to be purposeful while we're here. So I think it's important too, at the beginning of every meeting, I want that to be on the agenda once we adopt the mission statement of that sentence or 2 sentences or paragraphs to just remind each other, hey, this is why we're here and what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes or 3 hours and 15 minutes, whatever it is. Thoughts on that stuff?
So would this committee be the one where people are requesting stop signs, lights, or speed limits?
It potentially could be. Those items will also go through Public Works, but I know when Jennifer and I had put forth bringing back the CLIPS committee, we thought this is kind of a good starting place for that, because this committee could do kind of the vetting before it would go on for a recommendation. So certainly that's something that citizens could bring forth to this committee and ask.
I've had some come in about speed, and I really wasn't sure. I knew Public Works, but I knew it had to go around to someone else besides that, and I really wasn't. Committee-wise, where did it go?
Mm-hmm. And there might be pieces that revolve around that are, it's possible for speed limit as an example, like maybe it's already been reduced the max amount that we can reduce it. So there might be just educational pieces around that this committee could handle too.
Who else got input on a mission statement? Or like what's here, don't like what's here, add, subtract, multiply, divide?
I think it's a good starting point for us.
Okay.
So I know we have it back under action in case the committee felt comfortable this evening on actually adopting one. We do have it as a discussion and possible action. If we don't feel comfortable tonight in adopting one, we can just skip that agenda item and we could come back to it next month. Or if there was an example provided that you felt strongly about, it could be adopted tonight.
Okay. Any thoughts on one that we like? My vote is I like what does the committee do, what that block is there. I think that encompasses what we have here. We can certainly build on that, but it gives a high level overview of the direction we need to be headed. So if anyone else agrees with that, we could take formal action on agenda item 6. Or we can move to defer that to another meeting or have staff come back with that or whichever, so. Discussion on that?
I agree with the mission statement.
Okay, good. Excellent. Good. Okay. All right, we'll move on to municipal ordinances. So there are many of them. I'm not sure why there are only 8 or 10 or however many's on here, because we have much more than that, right? Like this is just a start.
So these would be the ones that this committee would most likely be involved in.
Okay.
So these are the ones that there's not another committee or commission that has responsibility for. I should have put chapter 2 on here too, so if you get a chance, so when the board recreated the committee, there's a list of basically 10 items that this committee would be responsible for. So some of that is reviewing nuisance matters. You're gonna find out a little bit more on how we're incorporating the enforcement process with the Planning and Development Department and the newly formed Mountain Bay Metro Police Department a little bit later on the agenda. But there's a number of things, we just kind of put them out here so that you can start taking a look at. I didn't expect you to read through all of them. Some of the ones that are highlighted were more things that you may get involved in right away more often. And we just wanted to bring them to your attention. Pam's here, but the alcohol licensing, there's been some changes at the state level, so we may need to make some changes to that ordinance. You may be saying if she has anybody who does not pass their liquor license requirements. I believe you guys are the appeal process or will be for that. The buildings and addressing regulations, Roman is on later in the agenda. We'll start talking about a commercial building program that we would like to look at. Of course, the nuisance code, you guys have a lot of responsibility there. There's a lot of different departments that get involved in that between my department, SAFER, and the Mountain Bay Metro. And then the vegetation ordinance, that's basically the weeds, our mowing ordinance, that kind of stuff, different things that, I guess the weeds are also a nuisance, but those are kind of the ones that we just kind of listed. Animals may need to be looked at. That's something that hasn't been addressed for a while. We've been talking about it in our enforcement meetings. We have people who may need service dogs and things like that, so that may be something that comes to this committee for discussion. So it's basically here just so that you know, get an idea, so you don't go out there and look at all the ordinances. Like Jim said, there's a ton of them out there. So we didn't want you to get overwhelmed.
So we're taking any action on this, or
I had it listed
this
for
is just for information to show that there are many of them?
Yeah, so if there's anything, I guess, if you want to do something with directing staff on one of them to look at, I don't know.
Is there you had mentioned there was recent legislation changing the alcohol licensing that would affect your department. And so is that something that sooner than later we should, like number 6 should be a priority to amend?
I honestly, right now, I don't know that there would be anything in the near future that we would be amending. As it would come up though, as anything comes up, I mean, in January of 2025, there's going to be, for operator's license, there's going to be a state license versus just municipal licenses. They'll have the option of doing both. Bartenders will have the option of getting just a license to cover the whole state, which they'll apply through the Department of Revenue. I believe they haven't given us the how it's going to pan out yet. We're going to get that guidance later on this year, but they would still be able to apply for bartenders licenses through the municipality that they're going to be licensed at if they choose, but there will be the state one that'll cover the state if they want to bartend at more. So there might be some changes there, but yeah, so we'll bring those as they come.
Okay. Any other staff like, hey, we gotta have this one first? I think this is too many to do at once. I guess I agree that we can't do 13 of them. I don't know, who read through all of them? I did not. I read the first 2. I read 6, 10, and got through some of 54 because that 10 and 54 are linked together. A lot of these are linked together. And I stopped there and raised the flag and said, Jamie, come on now. Like, I appreciate the homework, but this is ridiculous. So if we can whittle it down to do like maybe 1 per meeting, is that a little more palatable? Okay, do we want to do them in alphabetical or numeric order since there's no preference one way or the other?
I don't know that the staff has any preference, that there's anything more pressing in one versus another, so.
Or do we wait till there's a change?
Well, there are many changes that in the first two, I've got like 6 pages of stuff,
Oh,
and I don't even do this for a living.
So if we wanted to take them in alpha order, that would be fine.
Perfect. Do we take action on that? What does that look like? We have no,
Nope, I would think under next agenda items, you could make a next agenda item the focus of chapter 6. A review of chapter 6 and to
Sure.
bring back any.
excellent, okay. Any other discussion on the municipal ordinances? No? Excellent. Move on to number 6, discussion or action on approving CLIPS mission statement. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve, deny?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, so the motion to approve, which one are we approving, please? Is it what does the committee do? Like which paragraph on there, or the whole page?
Second.
I think the one by what does the committee do?
Yeah, exactly, that's.
Okay,
So it'd be
So-
the Community Life and Public Safety Committee evaluates and makes recommendations to the village board on matters related to safety, welfare, and livability within the village and their impact upon the village of Weston residents.
well, this was a motion by Sir Wonka, second by Olson. Any debate on the motion? Very well. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. All right, discussion of current enforcement process in partnership with the Mountain Bay Metropolitan Police Department. Is that?
Carrie?
All right, thank you, Chair Pincinel and members of the committee. So this item is kind of an overview of how we're handling the enforcement process within the village of Weston, just kind of a general update. So there's no action on this item, it's just kind of an acknowledgement of our processes. So we recently updated the Citizens Guide to Residential Ordinances, and it is available on our municipal website. So that is available to residents just to kind of provide education about the ordinances that are most commonly referenced or that we have questions about. So that is kind of an educational piece that has helped to just kind of streamline information. And in terms of our processes, the way we handle code enforcement right now, and so code enforcement, just to kind of revisit, is those ordinances, a few of them that we discussed earlier. Code enforcement is kind of enforcement of all of the municipal ordinances throughout the village. So anything that we have, agreed upon, it's a way to enforce that and make sure it's carried out consistently throughout the village. So when we get complaints now, the way we prefer to handle them is we ask people to upload them online, and they can, so we have residents call in, they may do that, staff may be driving by and see things and may upload those complaints. As it stands now, we don't typically go out and target violations just because of the staff time it would take to do that consistently throughout the entire village. So primarily we're complaint-based is how it works now. Occasionally we'll have aspects of code enforcement. For example, signage along commercial corridors or situations like that that's in violation, we may handle kind of targeted specific things, but typically it's complaint-based. So when we get reports, we inspect to see if there is a violation. If there is, the owner of the property receives a letter outlining the violation and then a timeline for compliance. And I would say a majority of times this resolves the issue. Sometimes it does not, and they have concerns. They may call, we may work out a timeline. Sometimes we don't hear from them at all.
If that happens, then it is referred to Mountain Bay Metro PD. And the newly created Mountain Bay Metro has been very good about community-based enforcement. We hold weekly meetings with them, kind of updates on ongoing cases, and that's been very helpful. And sometimes in a minority of cases, I have to say, but there are citations and court proceedings that may be involved depending on the severity of the complaint or just the inability to resolve the complaint. So that is how we're handling it, and I think overall it's working very well. And any questions from the committee or anything anyone would like to know more about on that?
So when somebody calls in, I mean, strictly confidential, the way it said strictly confidential, I mean, that is not viewed by anybody, or I mean, everything, obviously, we have to see. Right?
So we do have a public facing element that shows code violations in the village, and the information can be obtained online. And it includes the complaint address, what the complaint is about, kind of the details about that, and if it's currently in violation or in compliance. We do ask when a violation is submitted for people to upload their personal information, because if we get to that citation court proceeding point, it helps to kind of bolster that case to have that information, how it was received. You know, particularly if a lot of neighbors are complaining or things like that, then we have a collection of that information. We don't needlessly give that information out. You know, if somebody asks how the violation was brought to our attention, we'll probably give like general information. So it would be as needed, but we do ask for that information just because it helps us down the line if we need to take further actions.
I just think in our neighborhood, for instance, like people have been reluctant to do that because of certain circumstances. They're afraid their names are gonna get tied with it, so.
Yeah, and if it's a contentious situation, I mean, we would take that into consideration, of course, and kind of note that. I mean, we usually, if we're talking to someone on the phone, we usually try to have enough of a conversation where we kind of get that context or that background if there is kind of a history or something like that. Right? Any other questions?
What's the current policy for follow-up on that? So your neighbor calls and says, hey, Joe's not cutting his grass, right? What does that look like?
So usually for grass, it's that example would be, it's kind of one of those examples where it's kind of like clearly the grass gets cut. So typically those violations are kind of more of an obvious. If there's something though where a neighbor complains about, like these vehicles are parked on the grass and it's, you know, it's making our neighborhood look like whatever, typically there'll be email communication with that person. You know, your complaint is, for any complaint, it's your complaint has been received. We will be inspecting to see if there's a violation and proceed with enforcement, like corrective actions as needed. For something like the vehicles on the grass, once it's resolved and the case is being closed out, there's another email that goes out saying, this property has been brought into compliance, this case will be closed out. And typically we'll get, you know, thank you for following up email or something like that. If it was a situation where you know, say the vehicles it's been resolved or whatever, but then later they continue to park them on the grass, then it's nice because they have that email contact to say, hey, guess what, you know, it's happening again or whatever.
So that's part of the evolved process, is that automatically.
It's not auto-generated.
Not automatically.
Yeah.
Not automatically. It's something.
So when Kim sends a complaint on Evolve, you're gonna get it tomorrow or the next day or whenever you get it. Even tonight, I'm not saying you're going home early, but maybe she is. But you'll get that and send Kim an email back and say, yeah, we got your complaint for 123 Any Street. And then when it's fixed or it's not fixed or after the inspectors or whoever, then Kim will get another email that says,
correct.
Yep, the car's no longer in the yard.
Correct,
Okay.
but not auto-generated. It's an email from my email. It's through Evolve, but it's to my email, my work email.
So you personally handle every one of these?
I handle the zoning complaints and then Travis handles the building code complaints. So it's kind of split between the two of us.
I think where it becomes maybe a longer process is when things will take time to get into compliance. And so maybe as we've gone out and inspected it, we've seen that improvements are being made. Is it in compliance? No, but our goal is always voluntary compliance. It's not to cite. We always want to try to have people come into compliance voluntarily. So where you might get an email right away from Carrie that says, we're looking at it, some issues are gonna take several months to get, and you might not get that resolution email because there's improvement, but we're not sending that continuous email for improvement. We're gonna send it once it's really close. So I think that sometimes that's where some confusion comes in, because we're trying to work towards that voluntary compliance.
Any other questions? No? Okay. No action on that one. Guide to residential ordinances, there's a link to that in there. If you haven't looked at it yet, it was recently updated. Staff did an excellent job with that. It was not great before, but it's significantly better now, so thank you. Looks very good. I don't know if that was your first, big task or not, but my hats off to you. I like it. Go ahead.
And if the committee ever wants paper copies of any of that, if at some point you're like, it would just be great to have that so I could make notes, just ask and we can make that, so we can get that to you.
We'll move on to discussion on expansion of ATV and UTV operation on village roadways.
That is Chief Hunt.
So when this committee was formed, it was asked for suggestion on what we wanted to see for town. So a number of years ago, we had to add a couple roads, and I appreciate Jen working with me. So I worked for the village of Rothschild. We did since '96 until the merger came. I also live in the village of Weston. I live on Shorey Avenue, so I'm a thoroughfare for ATVs, or had been in the past. So as time goes on, we're finding out that ATVs are more welcome other places throughout the state of Wisconsin. However, we have also limited some roads, so we say you can operate them here, but now it dead ends and you can't get to where you want to go, and then people are violating the law because they're driving places that they want to go, but they can't. So I have had discussions with Schofield, and we dead end in Rothschild at State Highway 29. Weston, you can jump over Highway 29, get to Schofield Avenue, and there's a couple roads after that. So the reason I threw this on here is Mr. Zielsdorf from Schofield had contacted me, and I'm hoping to open more roads or to get connectors so you get from Schofield into Weston, into Rothschild, into Croninwater, or wherever else you want to go. Again, I live on the thoroughfare. Sometimes I'll see 5, 10, 15 ATVs running through. Is there a problem? Some. Do we get complaints in law enforcement? Not really. I can't remember the last time we got a complaint of a speeding ATV or UTV driving on the road. We've had Rothschild open up all of the roads up to State Highway 29, everything south of that, for probably a year and a half or 2 years. Some people don't even know they're open, so they don't use them, and they'll say, hey, there's an ATV on my road. It really hasn't been an issue. I didn't know what we're gonna do in the committee. I threw this on here as a discussion, and before Jen had helped me with it, when we opened some roads to connect to Rothschild. So I threw it on here as a discussion and a starting point for this committee. I'm a proponent that we open more roads until there's a problem, which we haven't had so far. Moseley's open, Croninwater's got a lot of roads that are open. It just would be nice if there's a thoroughfare connector somehow to get to Schofield, into Weston, into Rothschild, into Croninwater, wherever else you want to go. So I don't necessarily have specific roads. I understand you don't want to have Business 51, Schofield Avenue, Highway J, and some of the other busier roads opened up. But some of the roads like Jelmick Avenue, Alderson Street, that gets you into Schofield to Court Street. I don't know. I think it's a great starting point, but I just don't like dead ends that you say you can drive here, but you can't get to where you want to go, or you can't get onto that road because now you started out at dead end. We have a lot of urban roads in Weston. Schofield's a little bit different, but that's not for us to worry about. That would be up to Schofield as long as we get roads that meet their limits. So that's why it's on here, and I just wanted to bring it up for discussion. So
Yeah.
So we discussed this a few different times in the Public Works Committee, and expanded it a few times to get more of that area along the Schofield Ave corridor, and over there toward Teagan Lane. I know the area north, well, kind of along Callan, we had residents come over to us wanting to see that added, to make some more connections. And when we got to the area of Teagan, we had looked to expand to the west, street there, but, over by Old Costa. And I remember there was some hesitancy to connect Old Costa to Teagan. I think at that time we were looking to connect through some land. But I know once we were getting west of Fuller, there seemed to be some hesitancy. I'm personally super open to expanding more and more roads. I think the last guidance that our Public Works Director kind of said is we take them as they come, as people reach out to us and say, hey, I'd love to see this area connected, can we add it? Then we kind of evaluate it and kind of been piecemealing it since then. I don't know what the right answer is, because I do think once you get further west toward Business 51, it gets a little condensed over there where people probably wouldn't want ATVs running on the roads, but certainly if you're going up Fuller and some of those more rural roads, it probably wouldn't be an issue, so.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Which committee is gonna be making those decisions? Because is this committee gonna make it, or is the Public Works Committee? Because if this committee is gonna make it, then we need, that's why I put it on the agenda, so that we have it clear on who's gonna be making the decision on that. And second of all, sometimes is it the best way to look is, do we make it better for people, or do we just sit back and only do what people request? And what is happening is people are riding ATVs and UTVs wherever they want to go with them anyway, anything from one-wheel motorized scooters, electric skateboards, to all this other stuff, and it just got to a way that society is pretty much welcoming anything. So some points we have to look at it is how do we legalize things to make it so that people are following the rules that we establish, and we're just not being reactive to the rules that people want, so.
And I just want to be clear, I think it should be through this committee. That's just where we had been discussing it before, because this committee didn't exist. And so I think I'm open to anything. I just wanted to give the context of how we've been handling things the past few years.
Good. Jamie, would then, so then that would be this committee makes a recommendation to Public Works or to board?
I would say it's essentially both. I think this is a really good example of where it's a larger issue. And so this committee has the ability to kind of do the deep dive and say, these are why we would determine it would be these roads. Public Works needs to be involved because signage has to go up, right? We need to tell people that they are open, and that would be under their purview. But we could bring forward to that committee those details to say, you know, it's recommended by the police department for these reasons on these roads. We've talked to the residents in the area, you know, that this committee has that ability to do more of that deep dive and that vetting. So when it comes to committee, it's ready.
I just got one more point on that is signs aren't even an issue anymore with that. We're not even signing anything. Most of the people have ATVs with GPS stuff, and all these maps are uploaded right on their ATV units that cost more than most of our vehicles do. And they run $30,000 ATVs at any given time on the roads, and so we don't even run any signs like in Rothschild. You just put them on a map, you open them up, and you know what the rules are, and that's just what it is. So, but we do have ordinances on it as well. The ordinance covers, you know, a lot of other things, including insurance on those. So I'm not familiar. Does the city of Weston have any roads open for UTVs or ATVs? So, but we still live in communities here that aren't that populated in some areas, but we also have connector routes that would be nice to open up to other communities to have that ability.
Does Rothschild have any exclusion on the use of alcohol?
It follows the state law on that. So if you get caught on a UTV or ATV, it's a DNR violation. but it's still the same as what it would be on a motor vehicle.
So you can have an open intoxicant and you can drink in them while driving on the streets.
I'd have to look at that portion. I don't believe that that is true.
Okay,
You can't drink and drive in them. It's the same as a motor vehicle. But if you get caught and you're under the influence, then it would be a DNR violation versus a traffic violation, you know, so it's a little bit different.
I know we have 2 other officers. I don't know that, but it's probably never come up because if you don't have any roads that are open.
What we do, it's not legal.
So to the law enforcement personnel here, would that be enforced then by the Department of Natural Resources or
No.
by?
But,
Okay.
yeah, so it's kind of convoluted, right? Some of it is a traffic violation, which is a uniform traffic citation, and some of it's a DNR citation. And that happens even on snowmobiles and other regulation that we run into on a time, you know, basis. It just happens that way. But I'm just saying OWI is specifically becomes a DNR violation, which is different from a uniform traffic citation, which you did if you're operating a car.
Mr. Olson, what are your thoughts on this?
In all of Marathon County, I think there's 2 or 3 DNR wordings, so like if you were only counting on them to do all the enforcement, it probably wouldn't happen, so any state law enforcement officer can do it. I don't think I have a strong opinion either way. I'd love to have ATV to drive down the road maybe someday. But I see them on my road all now anyway, so I mean, might as well make it legal, not a problem.
It's a public comment. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Paul Zilsdorf, I live on Ross Ave in Schofield. I'm on the Schofield Water and Sewer Department for Sewer Water Commission. And the reason I am here is I brought it up to Mark Dewitt, Public Works Director, and because I brought it up, I inherited it. I guess that's how it works. But the conversation at Schofield is that primarily we're open to opening all roads that are county and down to ATVs, UTVs, obviously not state roads. And before the Judiciary Committee will make an ordinance for that, and they want to see what Weston's gonna do. So the goal after talking with Jeremy is we're gonna try to connect Weston and Rothschild via Schofield. So on my preliminary map, which is very small, it would basically be, at this point, probably all Schofield roads. And the problem then would lie that you can't get from the connection from the red there to the Schofield, there's still a gap, so we have to fill in that gap to make the big connector go from Rothschild or up Rothschild to Schofield to Weston. There's some gaps in that we have to look at. And I have a preliminary map that I was gonna bring, but I couldn't get my printer printed, but I could communicate that to you guys via PDF as we work on filling in the blanks. That Mark from Schofield and I have been creating. So the goal is to, once Weston decides what roads we would possibly open, we're just gonna follow suit and open probably all the school. Carte blanche.
Even Business 51 and
Can't do that, because that's state.
state, okay. So
So
any
the
local.
The county ordinance says, you know, already that they're open, if we're approve at town or city level, but no, you cannot open any state-owned roads. I don't know if Jeremy has any insight on that, because you said in Mosinee, you can run across the bridge on 153, but, you know, there might be some exceptions there. But as far as 29, you can't run down Schofield Ave or Highway 29 or 51. You would be able to use it. And I think we would want to just regulate the congestion, so stay off of J where the dump trucks are and stay away from other high traffic areas. But in Schofield, we don't have that issue with it. As we're looking at connecting Alderson all the way through the other side of Rothschild into Schofield and probably Ross, bring Ross all the way into Weston. And there's our connector road. And peripheral streets could also be used.
So this is all under, we should have probably put this on as an ordinance, chapter 82, traffic and vehicles. And I guess just one of the comments that I want to make, just sitting in and listening to board meetings, I know that I thought the board had a problem with, and even Michael, as the public works director, with the arterial roads. So that would be Schofield Avenue, Ross Avenue, some of our like Weston, or major thoroughfares. We wouldn't necessarily want that type of traffic.
Chief,
I'm fine with that, because if you left Jellic Avenue, even if you couldn't go on Ross, you couldn't go on Schofield Avenue, and maybe you ran everything up to Ross Avenue and south for the time being, then you have a connector of Alderson Street and Fulton Street to get across State Highway 29. Maybe that's an opportunity to do a portion of it right away, and then look at that again after. And I do agree, part of what Louis had to say, that maybe you do a segment of it, see how it is, and move on to it. We did that in Rothschild, so. But that would accommodate Schofield a little bit, and I understand why would you want to open any roads if you're landlocked, you can't go anywhere, so drive around the circle, you know. I get that point. So, but at least that would give you Jellic Avenue all the way across. That would give you Alderson Street, Volkman. Yeah, at least there'd be a way for those UTVs to go on there. You know, it's like snowmobiling used to be around here. You could drive someplace now, we have no snow, you can't go anywhere.
Yeah, I just was wondering as far as UTV, whatever, going up and down the road, they're not going anywhere. They're driving up the road, and come turn around, go back down the road. They're just, you know, back and forth.
back in 1946, Barb, kids used to cruise Grand.
I know.
46?
One quick comment on that, and I thought that too, but a lot of people are going to work or using it for other reasons, and, you know, I live out on Shorey at Ryan, and people are bringing their trailers to go to the compost site. And, you know, George Zinser will come by because he goes and cuts wood south of me, and then he drives all the way up to Alderson and Weston. People are using them for other reasons. And, you know, they are all governed by the DNR, so they have to have licensing on through the DNR to even operate them on the roadway. They have to have license plates on them. But in law enforcement, I didn't be an old person in law enforcement. I thought for sure, even when they carry concealed, I thought, oh no, that's people are going to be having violations all the time. You hardly deal with it. And ATVs, we've had them open for years. You can probably call Coronawater or Mosini, and they hardly deal with it. It's really weird.
But I mean, is that allowed? Because I've got neighbors. I'm one of the first roads that opened up in Weston for this, and I didn't have a problem with it, except a couple times when they were having a party and they were backing up and down the road. And
that's what our phone number's for.
Yeah.
Because in the ordinance, it says that you can't just go up and down the road.
okay, well, that was my, I thought so, but I wasn't.
That's something we would have to look at, is where the ordinance is, and taken over in this whole Mountain Bay Metro. We're finding there's a lot of things that have to get changed and upgraded. And that would be one, but it does say in our ordinance, it says that you just can't race up and down the road. So
I'm sure ours, I thought that's when we were doing it.
but that's where the phone call comes to us, and then we go there and then we take care of that, so there's no big deal.
Other discussion?
Personally, I would guess see at least one of the major thoroughfares to connect them, Rothschild and Schofield. So either we do, you said Michael didn't like Ross Ave and Alderson, is that?
When it was discussed before, they were trying to keep them off of those basically major arterials.
Semi-traffic.
Just a quick comment on that. You do have Newport, and you do have Jellic, and both of those would connect into there. What's another one that would connect into that? Those are the two that you can get across with this bit. Both go there, yeah. Both go across. So even if you didn't open up, you know, even like East John Lake, if you used a different road, you could have a couple different options to get across.
Is any part of Ross have no, like when you get, no part of it, even by changing it?
You'd have to come Sternberg and you could cross at Sternberg, but then you'd have to get back to Ross. So if you went the other direction, the state's kind of south of Schofield Avenue, you get two other options.
Is there a motion to take action on this?
I guess my recommendation would be that we put something on the agenda for next month that says we are looking to open up ATV traffic to the entire village. Or here's a proposed map of the roads we are looking to do so that the public has an opportunity to see that. Because right now it just is discussion about ATV operation, which doesn't really talk about, you know, opening it up to the entire village. And I would want opportunities for residents to be able to come in here and express their approval of it or their not wanting to approve it.
I appreciate the transparency. Thank you. So. Chief Hunt?
I was just gonna say it's pretty clear in here, it's this discussion and expansion of ATV, UTV operation on village roads.
There's no language there, so without that, I'm not going to support it. You guys can do what you want, but I think there's no rush. We can do this in a month.
I think we would somewhat be looking, are we talking all roads, or are we talking, we do want a recommendation? Because then we would work with Chief Hunt on what's the recommendation of the roads that we would want open. I mean, is it all, or is it a component of the roads?
Personally, I would like him to look at it and bring us what he's proposing to have open. And then we can discuss it and maybe even have public works here.
Okay, perfect. Kim, what are your thoughts? You've been quiet.
Well, it's kind of new to me, like, I'm not, like, this is something that I never really even, I guess, thought about, so I'm kind of like, didn't even realize it was that big of a thing, that people were doing this, I don't know, it surprises me, but I guess I can understand it though, you know, as we talk about it, it is.
Okay.
Bigger than what I realized, so.
Yeah, Ms. Alsted?
Well, Mom and me starts with, so I have a few questions. I guess it's probably what you want. Like, is there an age limit for ATVs?
Yeah, you have to have driver's license.
Okay.
And you have to wear a helmet till age 18.
I'd have to look on that in the UTVs, maybe on the ATV, yes.
Okay.
But I'd have to look at that.
Yeah, I would just say that that's where, you know, strongly educating the public on what the parameters are, because I didn't even know. I mean, we have an ATV, we could just drive it on our land, so I didn't know any of this. So at first I'm like, oh no. I live off of Alderson, down the hill from Narrow Steel, and I do not think that part of Alderson should be under consideration because there's constant semis. It feels like a safety concern.
Okay.
Just one quick comment. Motorcycles go 140 miles an hour on our streets. ATVs, most of them can go 60 or under, most of them go 45 and under. And 16-year-old kids are riding at 140 miles an hour. So that does happen on a regular basis. So at least this is a little different option on that. And I just want to say that this isn't fully my decision. This is the committee's decision. All I do is enforce the laws that are put in front of me. So I just don't want anybody to think that I'm the one trying to open up all the roads. And I put this on the agenda because I thought we needed something to discuss because it's part of the committee. So it's ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the committee's decision. I'm just here and I'll enforce everything that you guys ask for.
Chief Hunt, on those motorcycles, are seatbelts available? So no seatbelts, no airbags. How about helmets? Are they required?
Not in Wisconsin.
Right now, in Wisconsin.
No, right? Okay, so we got that same two-wheeled with no roll cage, with no, not even canvas doors on it. Right? You can ride your skateboard down the road, you can do all that other stuff. I wouldn't do it because the airbags on skateboards are terrible. Right. Okay. Anyone else comments on that?
It's not really my purview, but
Oh, sure.
the other thing I think that the committee should consider, especially when it goes to the board, is that when you look up north, ATV and UTV is a huge money draw for those communities. Because potentially, I think there could be a lot of, I know if I say the word bars, everybody's gonna get a little bit excited, but there's gonna be a lot of bars and restaurants and places like that that will probably welcome something like this, and maybe even eventually hotels, if there's trails around here that they could ride on, it could potentially be a good economic impact to the area too. So just something else to consider.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to table this to the next meeting until a proposed map can be developed for the public to see.
Very well. So there's a motion to defer action on this until next meeting, which would be in September, until a proposed map can be drawn to take action on at next month. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Louis, second by Kim. Any debate? Yes, sir.
I just want to be clear, you want me to be in charge of the map, or would you want to be in charge of the map? Because someone has to be in charge of the map.
You are
I'll be in
absolutely
charge of
correct.
that.
We're gonna vote you off the island, sir.
I would,
Yes.
I would ask that you would bring in a map of what the proposals are, and that's where we could have, we would look at it and have the street, public works here, so that they can make their comments too.
Very
And
well.
Chief, if you essentially draw on the map, we can, Nathan can make the map to make it pretty, to bring it back. Yep, okay.
And do you want one map of the, hey, everything less these roads, or do we just want to add these 3 roads, or however many that number is?
I would say if we're gonna propose everything, assuming other than like the arterials, you know, on Schofield Ave or whatever, that just is what's brought to us so that the public can look at the map, see, hey, my neighborhood's included in here, whatever. I know it sounds silly, but I just think that transparency is a benefit to the community.
Agreed.
If I could just add one other quick thing, and it makes no difference to me who does the maps, just some information is there are a lot of ATV clubs that are, I mean, they butt right up to the village of Weston. I believe Ringgold has one. As far as maps go, I think they probably have maps done already that they would like to see. So I don't know anybody that's part of any of those clubs, but I know in other community boards that I'm involved in, they get proposals from those clubs every once in a while for maps.
The Ringo one came prior, because that's how it actually came in to Jay. Because it actually goes down Howard Road, Jay.
Because
Just
they
to
want
get
to
to
use
the
the
gas
road,
station.
Not to River Road, it doesn't go all the way
Yeah, it
down.
goes from River down.
Is that our next month, if staff can just put together the recommendations and then involve whoever feels appropriate that needs to have a say in it and bring back proposals, maybe invite that motorcycle club, ATV club here, that meeting, maybe they can give us some feedback on what we're looking at. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's much for ATVers in this group, so it'd be nice to get some insight before we make a decision for people who are actively using.
Any other debate? You're on. So all those in favor of deferring action on the ATV UTV map and having staff bring back proposals for what that map would look like until next month, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, say no. Very well, motion carried unanimously. Thank you for coming in for public comment. You're welcome to stay though, because we got lots of fun and adventures.
I will melt. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Excellent. Okay. I'll move on to discussion and or action on pedestrian traffic on Camp Phillips Road between East Everest Avenue and Westview Boulevard.
Again, I feel like I'm gonna wear out the committee. 'Cause I guess I'm not- So coming up, Camp Phillips, I just want something on there, some discussion in the future, because there's no way for pedestrian traffic to get across State Highway 29. I see it 1,000 times, maybe I'm exaggerating on that, but winter time, people are either walking on the median, they don't have a place to walk, they don't have a place to get across. We have hotels there and gas stations, hospital, and it's only gonna get worse as time goes on. I threw it on there just as a discussion point, because I thought this is what this committee is designed to do, is look at ways to make it safer and better for the community. And I see that every day when I come through there, so.
I'm gonna ask Barb for help on this, but I think that is the reason that the pedestrian bridge.
One
When they
good
were first
reason.
looking at doing something on Camp Phillips, they decided not. And instead, put the bridge.
Only problem with that is a long walk to get to the bridge and trying to get
I
across
know.
Camp Phillips Road.
But I think some of it was because it is, the state has control of a lot of that. That might be your question for that.
I know they didn't want traffic on, pedestrian traffic.
Problem is they don't have a choice.
And there is pedestrian traffic to the north and south of that, of the overpass, right? So we've got a multi-use path to the south, and we've got sidewalks in the north. So you're bringing people there, but you're telling them you can't cross.
Well, I don't think you're bringing up there.
Yeah, you can walk up the hill. Right up the sidewalk?
From Weston, you can't get, there is a sidewalk.
No.
Well, right, so it takes you to there, it takes you to that.
It takes you to that and then through Community Center Drive. People are always gonna.
But the gap, the safety concern is between there and on the south side where the pedestrian accommodations resuming.
At some point, they're gonna reconstruct that road, and at least if there's some thought in it, and that's, I just put it on that discussion.
Okay, but Camp Phillips is a county road, so they're the ones that would have control.
So could the committee make a recommendation to the board to make a recommendation to the county that when you rebuild the road, we would like to see this for safety? They'll probably tell us to go fly a kite, but at least we can.
Well, the county has started, Jamie, myself, and Michael met with the county highway commissioner. I think they're still in the planning station.
So now's the
Talk
time.
to Michael a little bit more, to see where that is. I think it's from Weston all the way up to us.
Yeah, I think the first focus was north, but because the south portion of that road doesn't need as much repair as the north portion would. But I think it would be something that if the committee's recommendation was that a letter would be drafted, it's something that maybe we could bring back next month to say, these are, as the county highway department is looking at this, these would be considerations, and that could be forwarded to the board to be sent to them. That would be one possibility.
Very good. Any discussion on that? Okay. Is there a motion to take any action?
I'll make a motion to have recommendation to send to the county when they're doing the repairs, that they provide a walk path for pedestrians.
Motion by Ermeling to to draft a letter to the Board of Trustees to forward to the county highway department for when county highway access reconstructed to provide pedestrian accommodations to cross State Highway 29 to connect the existing pedestrian facility. You know, right? Is there a second?
Second.
Any debate on the motion?
Would it go to the public works first?
I don't know, we'll go to Public Works first.
In this case, it's just a letter, and it would be under the county purview. I think you would certainly provide a copy to Public Works, but I don't know that we could involve them in the discussion next month too with the letter, if we bring a letter back, just to show before it would go. And if Michael's joining us for the ATV conversation, then he can give input on that too.
Yeah, I just haven't thinking, maybe wanna check.
Great. Any other discussion or debate on the motion? Very well. Are those in favor of drafting a letter to forward to the board to include pedestrian accommodations on County Highway X? Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Okay, discussion and or action on amendments to the ordinances for enforcement of municipal citations in reference to crimes on cell phones.
So when we were looking at this, I probably have to look and see if this goes under our section 42 on here. But working with the schools, we're trying to come up with an ordinance, and this would be something that I don't have anything drafted at this point, but we have a lot of crimes with kids in the school. They're using cell phones for a lot of different crimes. If they were adults, it would be prosecuted one direction. Since they're juveniles, we just want to be able to have the ability to write citations on some of those crimes. Pictures are being sent, and I mean, everybody knows what's happening on cell phones these days. So that was the point, and I didn't know when I threw these items in here, talking to Jen, where we were going with this committee, and so I can bring something back on some of the ordinance changes, but we're gonna have a number of those coming up in the future, and we just want to be able to write some citations instead of referring kids, or you can't charge them criminally, and that's the problem. I don't know what Watson's doing, or what you guys are doing in Hobart when you have kids in school. 15-year-old kids sending pictures back and forth, and okay, delete those out of your phone, and that's the end of that. Then it happens again tomorrow, and it happens tomorrow. We just want the ability to be able to write some citations, so at least we get them into court and deal with them on the school. So, I don't know what you guys are doing, and you were into it also, or Hobart.
I'm looking at all the schools in my jurisdiction are elementary schools, so it's not a problem. So we don't have an ordinance related to that, because we have multiple elementary schools.
Yeah, where are we starting?
That's a little serious.
Okay. Very well.
Could be. So what I can do is, in knowing where we're going with stuff and what we need for decisions today, I'll get some ordinances together on some of the changes that we want and bring back. So I don't think we really have anything that we can do with it today. It's just the fact that we're gonna be requesting the committee looks at different ordinances to make some changes in, so we have other abilities in those.
Excellent. And you'll coordinate that with Jennifer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go that way.
Okay, good. Any discussion on that? No, very well. Moving on to discussion on Old Castle Glass noise complaint.
There was a memo included in the packet. This has been a conversation at the Board of Trustees meeting, and we just kind of wanted to bring this committee up to date if you hadn't been following that discussion. And then Trustee Pincinelt had asked that it would be added tonight because it was somewhat of the stimulus to have kind of a separate group that could talk through some of these things if it was necessary to make changes to the ordinance. I know that Planning and Development has been handling most of the coordination. I don't know if either Jen or Travis want to talk more specifically about the memo that was in the packet and some of the processes that we've done up until this point.
So back in January, we got I before that we got a complaint from the resident at 5203 Scott Street about the noise coming from Old Castle Glass. So myself, Roman, Aaron spent a lot of time trying to get decibel readings from that residence outside the facility to see if it was in violation of our ordinance that requires decibel levels to be under 80 decibels for no more than 4 hours at a time. It was never in violation. Pretty much the whole time we're there. The only time it really runs loud is when they're running a certain type of glass, which they only do during the day. So we had, the police officers were stopping by every time the homeowner felt like it was too noisy. They were doing decibel readings. They never got any. It's just something that he was really having an issue with being able to sleep and function. But all the readings that we did not find anything that put him in violation of our ordinance for the Oldcastle West or how they're operating. So, he said it was something that was, he brought this as kind of to what this was used for, which is to look at the ordinances that we have for.
So the original noise ordinance was basically amended back in like the early 2000s. We had focus groups. There was a committee with a number of different residents and also business owners, because, you know, we do have some of this come up over, we've got some places that, like Crystal Finishing, we had some issues in the past there, with noise at times with certain residents and things like that. So this ordinance was looked at back then, and then came up with this decibel readings with 85 for 4 consecutive hours, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So this is kind of a touchy issue with everyone, just because you're basically, like our standpoint, we're dealing with residents who have quality of life issues and also the businesses who have employees and an operation that are running. So originally this was looked at as a zoning issue, but it's more of a nuisance issue. So it goes under the chapter 50. So that was why at the time Everest Metro was helping us with this issue, because they could be called out when it was happening. So they were helping, Travis said, take some of those readings. These residents were coming to the board meeting kind of every month. If you've ever been to a board meeting, you can't do a lot of that at that level, just because there's other business that needs to be done. So that's part of why this committee was created, to potentially talk about this issue. I personally feel you're going to have to get basically the business owners and that in the room too, along with the residents, and we can't look at it as just a specific property issue, just because whenever you change an ordinance, it affects the entire village. So that's just something to remember as we go forward here too.
As I recall, some of the discussion on that particular complaint was that they had at one time semi parked somewhere, so it wasn't affecting, it wasn't getting to the neighbors as loudly or whatever.
Yeah, for a length of time, they had a few semis parked right in front of a louver that we felt a lot of noise was coming from. During the winter, they moved them because of plowing and the ice buildup, and they just never put them back. And we felt like during that time, they did a better job of muffling the sound.
Yeah, because I remember thinking, well, what if they're, although because they are not in violation, but if they could have done something to kind of block some of that noise coming in. That was my initial thought, but they actually, what happened? Nothing, right?
They've done a lot of changes over the years. This has been an issue since I got here. Renee, who's on staff, dealt with that a lot. Previous administrators. So Old Castle has done a lot. We did take a tour of the plant. The processes have changed a lot, and they have new equipment, so they're not using some of it where this noise is. And there's also a secondary noise that other residents hear when it's kind of like Roman can hear that.
Yeah, so I live on the east side of Fuller Street on Twin Pines. And President Maloney lives across the river, approximately the same distance, about 2,000 feet from Old Castle Glass. And with that high pressure glass unit that they use, there's like a pressure blow off
that happens for about 90 seconds. And that, you can hear it on the east and north side of the plant, but the residents on the south side cannot hear it. So to them, we've asked them multiple times if that's what they're hearing. And no one on the south side of the facility that we talked to had an issue with that pressure blow off or whistle. It's kind of like a pressure cooker sound, just at a really high level. So I know that Marcus, President Maloney, has discussed that and makes mention of that when he hears it. And that usually happens a little bit later in the day, between 5 and 8 p.m. So a lot of times I'll be home for a little bit and hear that blow off.
It does happen to the south. I live southwest of there.
You can pick up on
But
that.
yeah, absolutely. So that, like steam releasing or whichever kind of a noise. I've certainly heard it after 8 p.m. I've certainly heard it after 11 p.m. That's my concern. If it's between 6 or in these hours, okay, it is what it is. It's a factory, right? We gotta work together, but shouldn't be after 10 p.m. Where did these numbers come from, Jennifer, as far as 110 decibels for immediate or 85? Was that
That's
just an?
what they were doing, and I wasn't fully a part of that. We'd have to kind of look it up, but the committee came up with that based off of, there's different guidelines out there. If you look, I mean, Aaron was researching, there's different, like, he'll tell you what like a lawnmower decibel is, what your refrigerator runs at, what people talking at, different things like that. And there's regulations out there on where damage can occur. I'm not sure. I'm guessing at the time, it probably was leaning heavily towards the business side. But I'm not sure how they can look at it.
I think 85 is a common number in ordinances. I don't know what you would know Rothschilds or Wausau's right off the top of your head, but I think 85 is a common number. So it probably also was somewhat a comparison to what other municipalities around us have.
Yeah, I guess another thing to point out when we go and talk about ordinances, especially like in zoning ordinances, we don't recreate the wheel. We basically look at what other communities have and we kind of pick pieces of them. So you can always do that too. We tend to look at neighboring communities or some that are similar to us and kind of craft ordinances that way. So a lot of them are similar when you look at them. They're just kind of tweaked to meet whatever the community wants at the time.
I mean, otherwise if they weren't somewhat consistent, you could see how things would be all in one place or another place, right? So.
Yeah, they're usually very similar.
With the past history of decibel readings, are they getting close to the 85? What's the kind of like ballpark of the highest reading that?
We were in the 50s.
We never got really close.
No,
We probably had some
of the 60s, yeah. The only place that it really got to the 80 was right next to the building, like right at the louver. And the 85 is at the property line. It's not where it's, the source is. I was outside his house, in his house, all times of the day, and most of them were, high 50s to low 60s.
So that, is this just how it's called out in the code? I didn't get down to chapter 50
Yeah, I
yet.
took that right out of it.
So, I mean, I'm not a sound expert guy, but I would assume whatever you use has got to be calibrated, right? So you can't just use your cell phone. Like there's
Yeah,
some
so-
super sound meter 3000 we got to use, and
We do have one in-house that we were using. I know the homeowner had his own, but he was using an app on his phone, and we were getting very different readings from what we had too. But
Yeah, one of the ladies that was a neighbor, she brought that app into the board meeting, and I think Aaron downloaded it. And we were getting different readings on cell phones, just listening,
even-
talking
yeah,
in my
different- yeah,
office.
2 different cell phones with the same app for different readings. So I mean that we actually use something that was designed for it.
Yeah, back when this was all going on, the village bought cell phones, that we had in.
but it's regularly calibrated, and we measure all the different frequencies and hertz and all that other
It
jazz. Or
probably
it's,
could use them for
and we have training on it, and we know exactly how to use it. I guess where I'm going with this is, are we duty experts in detecting this noise, or are we just throwing something to see, wow, my phone says it's 85, it's gotta be bad.
You want me to get it? I can bring it down and show it to everybody.
They just had gotten it, no, we aren't experts. There are provisions in the code that I suppose the company can be directed, to get readings. I know vibrations came up with this gentleman in his house. We have nothing to measure vibrations.
Nor do we have code, right? That would
Yeah, we have
associate to,
code
yeah.
That basically.
Let's see. Although loud, disordinate, unnecessary noises or vibrations of any kind which tend to cause or create disturbance. I mean, I get it, that's kind of your catch-all, right? But we don't have, well, you gotta have more than X amount of amplitude on this vibration. So how do you say if it's good or bad?
I believe that
There's a
the,
whole nother section about vibration.
the police department, when they went though too, they also have a sound meter.
They
And
did.
so their sound meter, which is different than our sound meter, also didn't get over the 85 decibels. And they visited at different times, or at times when they were called to take a reading
The
at a
residents
property.
were instructed to call the police department so that they could monitor the situation when it's happening.
And do we ever capture the pressure cooker noise? 'Cause if you can hear it 2,000 feet away and I can hear it however many feet away. Well, right, but that's, you said it's a narrow window, right? It's a 90-second or a 2-minute outfit.
That was never really the issue he had, the homeowner had, so that was something that was never really, we didn't get.
Got it. So his complaint had nothing to do with that noise.
Did nothing to do with that. He never.
What, times are these complaints, are they throughout the day or mainly at certain times?
We have, these logs, they were there at night, they're all throughout the day. Okay. There's nothing that stands out as a certain point. I know they run when they run their 1/8" glass, that's when the motors ramp up the most, and then that's done during the day around noon. So we look at that point.
And then, the 3 residents, they live approximately close to each other.
Yeah, 1 block away.
So has it only been the 3 residents that have come forward with the concerns?
Yes.
Okay. Is
Mr. Pencil one of those 3?
No, I can be. I mean, you can make it 4 if you want. I can jump on the bandwagon, but I just think we should do something. Like, obviously, it's a factory, it's gonna have some noise, but what is the acceptable level of noise? I think the constant fan deal, we do live next to a factory. You know, chicken and egg, one thing came first, right? You either built your house or Hofer's probably moved in before Old Castle did, right? But one of those 2 was there first, right? Whether the guy that lived there or so you have to have that.
Around the plant actually, when you look at this other edition, it's called Hofer's First Edition. It was basically back in the day when they provided housing for.
Housing for it, right? So, you know, it's, if you work in a coal mine and they provide you a tent, you have to understand that you're living in a coal miner's tent, right?
I only, when we were talking about the numbers, I'm just looking at a map here, and I mean, there's quite a few residences there along Corazawa, Linda Street, Scott Street. And I guess the fact that we've received only 3 surprises me if it's that burdensome of a noise. There's quite a few people that live there that we haven't heard from, so I'm not saying that it's not a problem. There might be people that are just kind of biting their gums and don't care, but it surprises me that there's so many people. And
When he was coming to the board, he actually went around the whole neighborhood, try to get all the neighbors to come in to help, talk about what they're hearing, and there was only 3 different or 2 other residents that ever showed up.
so did those other 2 residents come forward after the original resident?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was he trying to sign a petition? Yes. Yeah.
Did we ever receive a petition though, the signatures? I don't, okay.
You a long-term resident there, like you've been there for years? Yeah. So what changed in December? Why all of a sudden is it burdensome now if it hasn't been for years? Any idea?
No. So there was what triggered it was the trailers being, the trailers that were abutting the building, when those were removed, that's when. And you definitely asked it was through conversation, that is what we was sticking with. But I mean, we'll say most of the buildings on Corzala, those are mostly duplexes and they're mostly rentals. So, not that people that rent property aren't disrupted by the factory, but, typically, I mean, the people that come forth are homeowners that have been.
The biggest thing in the wording of the section was unnecessary noise. And that's where most like the factory was running at their necessary, they were doing their job to try to keep that noise level as low as possible.
Have they considered putting the semi-trailers back to?
We talked about that multiple times.
Yeah. Or like a wall or something.
It's right where they back their trailers up to their loading docks as well, so
And that piece of equipment that the louvers are there for has changed. So that's one of the upgrades that they made. So in addition to just the truck traffic and the ice buildup, they did upgrade that piece of equipment, which I think was another catalyst for them to move them. So it doesn't, I don't even think that they open those levers now. They don't have to vent it anymore the way they used to.
They are synced with that piece of equipment that we toured. I mean, so the louvers open and it's actually the sound that's generated is air being pulled into the building to assist in that glass production and cool off process. So it's that almost whistling sound of passing through the louvers that. And so Greg wanted the resident, he wanted, at one point he was requesting a sound wall be installed at the property line on Old Castle. So
There's an existing.
there is an existing fence. It's a 36-foot high privacy fence.
Okay, good. So no action on that, right? We're just gonna talk about it. Now we know what it is.
I think we wanted the committee to have some awareness, so.
Good. So we might see that again someday. Maybe. Very well. Discussion of future exploration of commercial building inspections program.
This one is Mr. Roman.
Last but not least on the agenda, so. The Village of Weston as a municipality does not have a commercial building inspection program. Okay. We have a commercial electrical inspections program, because that's required by the state. Currently, all of our commercial buildings, any additions, build-outs, fall under review by DSPS and inspections by them. So we're one of the largest municipalities that I've talked to our commercial building inspector about that does not have a delegated commercial building inspection. So this has been kind of for me, when I took over the inspections department last year, I think it's an important program for the Village of Weston to look at. There's a lot of nuances that go with it. We have to request delegation from the state. We have to have a commercial building inspector taking care of those inspections, and then we have to take care of commercial plan review as well. So there's a lot going on with this topic, but we wanted to get it out in front of the Community Life and Public Safety Committee and kind of just, flesh out some details. If it's of interest to the community, or the committee to
to move this forward, then so be it. But that's attached a lot of background and stuff to the agenda, so definitely would love to discuss with you.
So right now, let's say, Jim wants to build a new auto shop. What do we have to do for that? So we hire it out right now, it's up to years.
Yeah,
No.
so, for example, that, for starters, right, that commercial building plan needs to get sent down to Madison to DSPS for plan review. And then, the building inspector, that covers the 7-county region, which is mostly central Wisconsin. He's overseeing the inspections of that building. Now, there is a threshold of items that underneath the 25,000 cubic foot threshold don't need to go to DSPS for plan review. Part of it is occupancy related, okay? So different occupancies have slightly different thresholds. And then so the challenge with that is the inspector lives in La Crosse and covers the 7-county area. He's in Weston once a week at best. Now, it is definitely, we've got multiple business owners in the room, so it's from a services standpoint, I think it would be fantastic to have a commercial building inspector on staff for business owners in the community and readily available.
So all I had to do for my building, I'd say all I had to do, right? I have 50,000-ish cubic feet, so that's above the 25,000. My plans wouldn't even be looked at by the planning and zoning folks until they were stamped from the state. And we maybe changed that a little bit now, but so the DSPS, was it Department of the State Public Safety or something? I don't know.
Safety and
There you go, Safety Professional Services. Unfortunately, you can say it way faster than they act. So that they looked at the building, right? So to build this commercial building, you have to have an engineer stamp it because it's commercial, right? And then it has to go to those guys, and they probably just look at the commercial engineer stamp and then put it on the pile for a month and then pull it off the pile and stamp it and send it back to you and give you the thumbs up. Until I get that thumbs up from them, it doesn't go anywhere. It can't get through staff. So that's what the structure of the building and plumbing. And those are the only two that I'm aware of that had to be inspected.
Mm-hmm.
Then after, so I got checks in those 2 boxes. Broke ground on my building, built the building. There was no plumbing inspection. So the DSPS already said, Jimbo, the toilet's good here and the sink can go there and the drain can go here, build it. It's up to me to build it that way. No one inspects that. I guess it's up to me to build it to that spec. I don't know how you would change it after concrete is poured, how you move that drain, right? And then the only other inspection that I had, well, I had 2 of them. One was commercial, since the Village of Weston does commercial electrical inspection. There were a couple of points right when the service was put in, and then once again at the end when the final building inspection is done. But that's just, do I have the right trees? Do we?
Signage,
Right? Did you build what you said you would build? Right? But not, Roman's not out there measuring the gauge of the steel that's used on this column, right? That's ordered and it just is what it is. And then I had to work with this DSPS inspector, and really all he cared about was handicap accessibility, right? So do I have a handicap stall to park? Do I have a counter height that's conducive to being inclusive for all customers? Are my bathrooms ADA, that sort of stuff? But that's it. And I don't know of any, so other than the holdup, if you will, with sending the stuff to Madison, there's nothing bad about doing it the way that we do it. So I could see improving that, or giving that option of if you want to send it to the state and let it sit on their pile, or if we want to involve this other entity, I can see maybe changing it to do that. But as far as the other stuff, we don't have the staff to do what we do right now. We're behind. We're reactive on some of this stuff, or I don't know what the term that you used earlier was, where you wait until there's a complaint until we fix it, instead of being proactive on it. But what's the actual cost of this going to be, right? So we have a huge budget shortfall in the Village of Weston, and to add more load to that department, you'd have to charge exorbitant fees to pay, send it.
So they're actually on site a lot, so but they have to basically call the inspector. I mean, they're there, they just don't have any authority to do anything because they're not commercial building inspectors.
So which projects are you on that are different than my project? I didn't see you when we were building, and I'm not beating on your department, but you didn't come knocking on my sand pile and say, hey, Jim.
So Scott is in there?
Scott was not in there.
Well, he should have been in there for your electrical.
Scott was in there for electrical, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
But that's it. He's not there looking at beams. He's not there measuring pipes in the ground.
That they do catch things and they will call. They also end up, Roman will have to call the inspector for people who are working on projects who need the answers on, different commercial codes. So he does a lot of that. In regards to the cost, he can go into that.
Yeah. So I mean, the E-plan exam that I had identified in the literature here, they guarantee turnaround in 15 days versus the 28 of the state, which I feel is a huge benefit.
For sure.
And they also have revenue sharing. So instead of all of that money that you paid to send a DSPS, we actually get a portion of that back from E-plan exam. Okay. So their fee schedule is the same as the state, but instead of keeping it all, they give us a percentage kickback.
Okay.
I haven't talked with them yet this week. Been emailing back and forth with them to figure out what that percentage would be on what we would get back. But I think just if it was a no gain, just to have plan review in-house handled by professionals, not staff doing plan review, but an outside entity partnering with us to do plan review, to cut the review time in half. That's, I believe, a huge benefit.
Agreed. I think that's an excellent benefit to give the individual an option, right? If you
Yep.
still want to work with DSPS, you can work with DSPS.
They're entitled to do that per state statute.
And if we have a different plan that we can work with here, that, hey, we have this third party that can review it, I just don't see that, but there would be no additional burden on staff, correct? This would,
From a plan review standpoint, there would not be.
correct.
No.
So we're talking about two different things, right? Do we want to make this an option to add this secondary, whatever these guys are called?
E-plan exam.
Yeah, to let E-plan exam look at our plans, okay. But the other thing is, do we want to physically inspect in-house all these commercial things? I don't know that we can afford to do that, and it's really expensive to have two guys sitting here in blue shirts. Like, you're valuable team members. You're not $8 an hour yahoos, right? So like, it costs money to have highly trained, skilled professionals here. To add a third chair here, you have to have a pile of kickback from these plans to fund that.
I don't think we'd be adding an additional chair. My intent would be that we handle it just the two of us. Well, 2.5, because it's electrical guys. So, it's from a safety standpoint, like you said, the commercial building inspector was on site how many times?
0. Well, just at the end, right?
Yeah. There's as you know, there's a lot of moving parts that take place in that process. And I think
maybe it's not that we have eyes in the building that can enforce the commercial building code
Do we,
more often.
the fire department comes through and inspects every building for fire safety stuff annually, right?
For fire code, we do.
Right.
The one thing that I would add to this is that, I mean, I think there's some benefits for a commercial building inspector too, and obviously I work with a couple different municipalities, and one of the other municipalities that we cover, we had a true structural integrity issue at a commercial structure a couple years ago that we got called for. I didn't feel comfortable with it, but I'm not an engineer. That's not what I do. So I looked at the building, I'm like, yeah, I don't think it looks good, but I can't shut this building down because then does the fire department get sued because we don't know what we're talking about. We shut this building down, or we don't shut it down and something bad happens. They say, the fire chief was here, he looked at it. So I was in a bad position. That municipality also does not have a commercial building inspector. So we called the commercial building inspector they used. He's like, I'm not touching it. So then I called our attorney and I said, what do I do? He said, well, you're in a bad spot. He said, if you shut them down, they'll probably sue you. So in the end, what we actually ended up doing was because it was a hotel and they had a swimming pool and there were issues with the pool. So the health department actually came in and shut them down. So that helped. But I mean, I actually called Scott, even though it wasn't his problem. I'm like, I need some help here. So he directed me to somebody from the state, but they couldn't come up for like 3 weeks. And so I think somebody with that background would be helpful without question. But that's just my 2 cents on it, I guess.
I have a question. The designated community, how is that type? So we have to be that
Yeah,
to utilize this.
so you have to ask permission from DSPS to be in charge of the commercial building inspection program.
What exactly does it entail to do that? I mean, do you have to go back to school, or is this something that is a third party that does it all? I mean, I agree with Jim. We can't handle any more hiring of staff. There's no money there. What, other than getting a faster turnaround and you being able to have a better handle on it, do we get more money for it? Or what are we paying out then? I guess I'm just kind of lost as to what is the benefit other than you being able to go in and check something.
A lot of questions. So, see if we can get them all. I would need to be one of us on staff would need to be a commercially certified building inspector, which is passing a test proctored by DSPS or having an international code council test passed that you can provide to DSPS and say, I passed a test. So, and then once that is in place, then you send a letter to DSPS and say, we're requesting to be community to be delegated. Here's our building inspector, and then here's our plan review entity. If the municipality wanted to adjust the fee schedule, they could definitely do that. We haven't really adjusted the fee schedule in any large scale capacity since 2017.
Well, does the builder have to provide funds to the state for inspection?
They pay a fee.
So, I don't know what Jim would know, what he paid for his plan review.
It wasn't ridiculous, like a couple $100 maybe. And so if that's one of those things where it's, okay, well, I pay a couple $100 and Madison will have it done in 6 weeks, or I can pay, instead of $200, maybe I can pay $400 or $350. These guys will have it back to me in 8 days. Okay. 4 weeks faster for $250, you got it, let's do it. Or if the project doesn't matter, if we're doing this correctly, we're doing the planning in December to build in April, whichever, but that doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes it's April and we don't have this stuff, or stuff ran behind, and now we gotta pay this $250 tax to the man to get this thing rolling. This is gonna cost us more than $250 to delay this project by a month.
So a lot of times they're asking for putting in foundation just because the state can't get to it. So for example,
mid-July. They can't get to the state for their approvals until the 13th of August. So, and they originally had wanted to get going this past spring, but things had happened on their side that delayed. So it does bog down. I guess another point I want to bring up, when we started looking at this, the state was looking at changing the square footage requirement. Or the
Cubic footage thresholds.
So like in the case of the Wendy's, Roman had to call down to see if even that was within that size range.
It was
even if
teetering
we
right on
looked
that,
at.
right on the 25,000 cubic foot.
We do have
threshold.
a few places like the Caribou Coffee, never had to have any state inspections, but they were changing, what was it gonna go to 40?
No, they were trying to push the 50,000 cubic foot threshold to a 100,000 cubic foot threshold. So historically, what's taking place at DSPS is they used to handle commercial electrical inspections. They don't anymore. They've pushed that back onto the municipalities. They're trying to adjust the threshold for buildings from 50,000 to 100,000 cubic feet. So Jim's building is just over 50,000 cubic feet. You look at, Green Hill Community Center, it's a gazillion cubic feet, so, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that falls in between those two structures from a size standpoint. Go ahead.
So for the Caribou project, we're all familiar with that, right? The small Caribou Coffee deal, that's probably not even 1,000 square feet, right?
It's less than 1,000 square feet. Cubic footage, I think, was right around 9 to 10,000 cubic feet.
So they sent their plans to the state, right?
They didn't have.
They don't have to, so they do nothing. So they just come to your office,
They just
fill out whatever they fill out,
review.
pay the Weston tax, and done. And you don't have to inspect it, Roman, right?
We
So no one
still
inspects
inspect to make sure the footing's in the right place to match the site plan. And then Scott's there for commercial electrical inspection. No plumbing inspection is done, no building inspection is done.
And we've been doing it that way for years, right?
When I first started here, I knew who the commercial building inspector was, and he was in the office meeting with Al Bride, who was our original building inspector when I started. Valerie could attest, he was here 2-3 times during the week. So as it's gone and they've changed, we've had less and less contact with them. So all of the, construction that's going on, I mean, when I found out that it wasn't really, I guess I was worried about that, because these are places that are public places, that people are looking at. So, like I said, if they see something when they're driving by, or they happen to be there, they have alerted the state inspectors of things.
And I've got a pretty good, line of communication with it. So, but we don't have any enforcement power on commercial code when it comes to buildings.
But the state does, right? So if you drive by and say, well, holy cow, they put all those I-beams in upside down, right? You can call your guy at the state. Say again?
Depends if it went for plan review or not.
So, okay, so on this small Caribou Coffee project, right? You drive by and say, oh my goodness, they put all the shingles on upside down. What happens? Nothing?
Nothing.
Other than you get a wet coffee?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
My concern, the bottom line is, how would it affect our budget? Your time to do it, I guess the education is, we do education all the time, so I'm not worried about that. But it's just, it's time frame for you, your department, I shouldn't say just you, your department, and the cost, the bottom line.
Absolutely. And I guess, from a time standpoint, I'm salaried, so.
No.
I think one of the big things with time too is I'm only a year, so over a year in. So as we go, I have 3 of my 4 residential, we'll have my 4, so I'll be able to handle the residential side of things as well as the commercial side. So hopefully as we go, it'll get easier. We can handle a little bit more.
I mean, what's the focus? What does, the guidance board want to see as a focus? Is it nuisance complaints, or is it actually, ensuring buildings are constructed properly?
Well, for me, it would be if you came to the board and said, okay, but I gotta increase my budget by this much to do this. This is one no.
That's my question, as I'm reading your pros and cons sheet here, I assume you're the author, I'm sorry if you're not.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it's making it, the way it's written, it's making it sound like this is a $0 cost. Is there actually gonna be cost associated with this, taking this on, like me saying it's not gonna be extra staff time? Is there any cost that you foresee with us partnering with these folks?
With E-plan exam?
Yeah.
No, there's no cost to the municipality with partnering with them.
So we're, I mean, I'm reading this correctly, which when it comes to inspections, I'm probably the least knowledgeable in the room. So you're really offering a service that's costing us nothing, that might also maybe make a little bit of revenue
For the plan review,
for the plan.
Well, we
for,
could also look at the building permit side of things, like Roman said, we have it increased. And right now, those fees are kind of, I mean, they've been looked at before. You have your site plan review, and then we have our building permit fees. It's kind of just basically us registering it right now. So, those go into the general fund. I don't know. We've talked about that with Jess. It's like, we kind of are, these are pass through, these are user fees, so that can always be looked at and increased, which we're going to be bringing that to the board anyway, because like Roman said, most of our fees haven't changed since 2017.
so to take $100,000 in salary with benefits, divided by 12 months, calculator works now, thank you. $8,333.33. So what do we generate? $8,000 more in building inspection fees to pay for Roman 2.0.
I'm not proposing adding $100,000 budget.
We wouldn't do anything for the budget.
So maybe what would be best is just to bring back what estimated resources are needed by staff, right? So if I spend your salary, so you're here however many hours a week, right? 50, 60, 70. So now you add another 60 hours or 16 hours of inspecting Burger King, right? What does that look like? Where do those 16 hours come from? Do you take 16 hours somewhere else, or do you go from 60 to 76 hours? What does that 16 hours look like?
One right now, we're helping Brid Mountain.
Why?
He's also doing that.
Yes.
So there will be time. I mean, we can schedule things in. The idea was just to bring it, to start a discussion, and we can bring back numbers for you.
That's what I need, numbers.
But we didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it.
If I could just add one more quick thing. So two things. Number one, Red Mountain switched to E-plan exam, you probably know a few months ago, I don't remember, 6, 8 months ago. And I get included in all the emails that go back and forth. And from what I can see, I mean, I don't take a deep dive into those things. I look to make sure nothing looks crazy from my standpoint, but I don't look at it real close. Those guys seem to be on top of things, and I think they must have 1 or 2 people that don't sleep, because I get emails at like 3 o'clock on Sunday mornings. But that, and then just back to the commercial building inspector thing, from our standpoint, and especially Marty, our fire marshal, I know he works with Roman and Travis probably already quite a bit. And I think if we did have somebody with some commercial background, just because all of the buildings we work with are commercial, that would be pretty helpful to us. Because there are things that we get questions on, or we just don't know. That would be really nice if we had somebody that we could talk to in 2 minutes and get some feedback on, versus trying to track down somebody at the state, which is next to impossible. So I totally understand the cost standpoint, and I get that, but I mean, just from my 2 cents is that if there's somebody locally that could do that, would be helpful to us as well.
I guess it's not on here for action, so there's no action that can be taken, correct?
I would just suggest that they get some information. Yeah. For next month.
So that would just be an informal request, then we
Would-
can
yeah.
formally act as a body.
But you
to
wouldn't
take action.
you also could handle it under items for the next agenda, that items would be brought back to, either way.
And so what specifics would you like to see? Barb?
Well, what time frame, how much time approximately do you figure there, but if you're saying you're gonna take over more of the general inspections that you're supposed to do now, and you would be doing that, but I need to know that. Okay, how this is gonna work out and what the cost would be if there is.
And the Rib Mountain one is a good example. We have been, if communities, neighboring communities have needed assistance, we've assisted. Rib Mountain is bringing the person, they're getting their training. When they get their training, we'll discontinue that. But how do we, in the situation going forward, would we still be able to work those things in, or would we have to say no? Or how would we work them in the overall schedule?
We would probably, I mean, it's obviously case by case basis, right? But in the case of Rib Mountain, when they requested our services, they had been turned down by the city of Wausau because they didn't have capacity to assist in that. Now, city of Wausau provides them with commercial building inspections. And then plan review is handled by E-Plan exam for Rib Mountain. So, Wausau takes care of part of it, but weren't willing to accept the full responsibility of residential stuff at that time last year. So.
Is there any third party that does commercial building inspections? We've got the third party to E-Plan exam that can do that side of it, but is there Joe, the building inspector, that comes around and we can just hire Joe?
Yeah, there are commercial inspection entities. I would have to do some digging on locally. I know that there's definitely, larger municipalities, there are entities that strictly just handle commercial inspections.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that?
Do you know roughly on average commercial buildings in the last year? On average, I didn't look that number up, no.
We don't provide that.
Yeah, we
I
definitely
think
can.
there's 25 right now that are in different phases out there. Typically, those are, some of those are finishing up. They were ones that were site plans for us last year when they started construction. Usually they take anywhere from a year to 2 years.
And then how many residential? So you got 25-ish commercial, maybe.
We're
What
averaging
residential?
about 100 to 120 residential permits per month.
So it'd be like 25% more inspection.
But it'd be nice to know that they're inspected.
Correct, yeah, it's absolutely a good,
I didn't realize they weren't.
When you say 100 per month, that's new construction and remodels.
That's new, that's all.
That's all permits.
Permits that are handled by my department, separate from water utilities, separate from sign permits, separate from special assessments. That's filed down to, we're anywhere from 20 to 30 permits a week that come in.
Okay.
On the residential side. Or total, I should say total.
I give that number to the board every month. So for July, they were, it was 113 commercial permits out for the year. That was through June.
so a 1 year window, 113 commercial.
They had 19 single family, 113 commercial, and they were at 611 total permits issued, but that does include the lateral permits and the assessment letters.
Okay, any discussion on that? Hold on, okay. We are gonna have the shortest CLIPS meeting ever tonight, just so you know. There will not have been a shorter one than tonight. Very well. Any announcements? Very well. Remarks from committee members. Brent? John?
No.
I had just emailed about, if we wanted to stick to 4:30 as our time for the meeting. I know that was kind of thrown out there, and I'm down for whatever works for everybody's schedule. The conflict I have just myself is that I work until 4:30, and there's somebody that needs to be in the chair that I sit in at work for me to leave. So I make that work, for the other meeting that I'm in, and just because it's a long lasting committee, but being this was brand new, I thought, was there anybody who felt this should be a different time, or? I don't know.
We'll start back over here, Brent.
I'd be okay at 5 o'clock. It'd give me a little bit more time to get here too, but I can make 4:30 work too.
Okay.
It works.
John?
Definitely later is better.
Okay. Okay, yeah. How about staff? Like, does 5 work?
The reason it was set at 4:30 is typically the meetings are 4:30 and 6, so this is one of the only Mondays where we could have a 6 o'clock meeting. So you may end up where you are compressed for time. If the board has a special meeting, that would be the only thing that I could think of.
What could we then put out a special that we could meet earlier, but meet later on a regular basis? At 5 o'clock.
That's an option too.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll move the special meeting of the board to after this meeting, because there's other meetings that play that
Yeah,
same game.
but I mean, but if it was something that was gonna be in conflict with this meeting,
Yeah.
that you could move it to the fourth, back to the 4:30, but have it regularly at 5, just in case.
Well, there was a vote 6 to 1 to not have 2 board meetings, so I don't think you're gonna have another regularly scheduled board meeting. I have some statistics to back that up for the next board meeting, so stay tuned. Sweet, they'll be at 7. Okay, so does anyone object to having us at 5 versus 4:30? Okay, wonderful. All right, that's all I got. Okay. Fine. Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming and for doing this, right? This is our first time. It wasn't flawless, but I think we did really well. We got some good information here. Good stuff to move forward. Jeremy, you're limited to 5 for next month. That's it.
Wait, 5 minutes or 5 agenda items?
5 agenda items. Excellent. Okay, good. Items for next agenda. So our next regular meeting date will be Tuesday, September 3rd. Tuesday. How's that not Monday?
Because Labor Day is Monday. Yes,
So we get the holiday or what?
yep, we get the holiday.
It's an unpaid holiday, correct?
Oh, it is a paid holiday.
You heard it, Administrator, you will all be paid for that holiday. And then we will also ask you to report back on Tuesday, September 3rd at 5 p.m., not at 4:30. And then items for the next agenda. So we're gonna take a closer look at chapter 6 specifically. And then the rest of
We'll have
the
the,
ordinances later.
UTV, ATV.
Traffic patterns around Weston Elementary School. There's a potential safety concern there and cars parking. But that's one of yours. You didn't even get a say in it yet.
Yeah,
we've been working with the community service officers on that, but I can ask if maybe one of them could give an update at the next meeting.
That would be fantastical. And then Barb had specifically requested that we get farther into this commercial building inspection thing, specifically the time commitment that it would require our current building inspection and planning zoning team to do and how we would make that work, the costs associated with that, other staff resources, so training, do we have budget for it? What the cost to do the, I'm gonna read it again, E-plan, and implement that. And then if there are commercial third party commercial building inspectors in the area and what that would look like, could we still do building inspection, but not do it in-house, have someone else do it?
Chief is gonna bring that.
Yes, I think that was acted on, no?
And then if there are any ordinances that are ready for amendments.
Very well. All right. No further business on the agenda. I would accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Okay, motion by Lopez Serrano, second by Ermeling. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion is adjourned at 6:30. Thank you. See, shortest meeting.
Don't worry, Jeremy.